Thank you. So what I will just do is to repeat what I said before the adjournment, is that I hoped people would take the opportunity to contemplate a compromise which may be not ideal to one or other of the groups, but at least would be something that we could all agree on and be satisfied with. And I'm going to hand over to Councillor Gray, who in fact had worded a compromise after consultation some other people. So can you recall what you...
Yeah, so my suggestion was that we split the difference, the project at $500,000 or $1 million project, that we take half of that funding from rates and half of the better off funding, recognising that that means that both teams, both sides, have to make pretty big.
Usually, it's the phone near here.
It is now. It is now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so my suggestion is that we split the difference and we take 500,000 from the better off funding, 500,000 on rates, whatever the final figure comes to, because I think that way that would keep everybody equally unhappy. Everybody has to give a little compromise on their positions, but ultimately have a solution that maybe meets everybody's needs.
Right. So I think to summarise, the recommendation is a little bit like the one we before, except this time we have $500,000 from additional funding in the annual plan, etc., and we have $500,000.
50% of the project cost funded from rates.
Well, the problem with that is that until we get, what we need to do is to plan for the first year, and then we need to come back and see. So it's not an either or here, but I think what we do need right now, we can't set a rate based on a hypothetical future cost of something. We need to put a stick in the ground, and the calculations I think several of us have done is say $1 million will get us a long way in the first year. And that's the advice I've had from PE as well. So if you're happy with that, then it's $500,000 from rates, $500,000 from the better off funding. You're seconding that? Oh, well, I need a seconder before we discuss it.
Melissa taking her way out of here. She's taking her concentration.
Yeah, but
You want to borrow the digger? Don't go too far, you might just.
Do we have a seconder for Councillor Gray's resolution, please?
I would second that.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to talk to your resolution?
Think of it did.
I think you did. Okay, thanks. Councillor Bos.
No, Rebecca.
Okay, right. So we'll open up the room to comment from councillors. Just as a sort of a word of advice, I think it helps in moments like this if we start our kōrero by saying, I'm going to speak for the resolution for these reasons, so that we're clear that that's what you're doing, or we say the opposite. I will be speaking in opposition to the resolution for these reasons. So, yes, who was first? Councillor Woodcock.
Yeah. If we were going to go with this resolution, I would like to see a stipulation put in there that the $500,000 or whatever comes out of the better off funding is but if there's any overruns, it gets added into the annual plan for the rates in the following year. Yes. So do not want to see all of a sudden this becomes twice the price and that better off funding disappears.
Okay, I think it's probably fair to say that it's impossible for us to pass a resolution today which will completely bind a future council, but we understand the sentiment you're saying, I think.
We are the future council for that year.
Well, that's true for another couple of years. That's very true. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we've heard from Councillor Woodcock, Chief Executive.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We just would like it obviously reflected in the wording, if at all possible, that a recognition is that this is a multi-year project. And that by whatever, whether it's through a percentage or as you're suggesting, a hard capped $1 million, that we'd be entering into a contract that committed us to that longer term work in any case. And so this wouldn't be one of those variables that we'd be able to opt out of in the next period, as it were.
Could I ask a question if you then fall on that? If the council said, okay, we will accept $500,000 from the Better Off funding, are you able to calculate what that would mean for the rates going,
Give me 10 minutes.
I mean, because you've asked for a figure. We're not going to give you a dollar figure. If we agreed and said, here's $500,000 towards it, the rest is rates, are you able to calculate that?
So instead of $1 million coming out of rates, it's 500,000.
Well, because you said that would be 1.3, it could be whatever. But if taking Woody's point that said 500,000, that's it, no more, end of story, no matter what happens. Are you able to sort of do it? So we could strike the rates. Are you able to do that?
When we gave an estimate before, we said if we increased the rates by an extra $1 million for these two projects, pushes up to 27-28%. So for $1 million, we're taking that to $500,000.
Yes.
So we'll do that.
I don't want to support it, but I will. But it's literally $500,000, not a cent more.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Roll.
Thanks, and thanks for, consensus to me is a big thing because that means we're all pretty much on the same page and there is a lot of give and take. But in this particular case, I'm pretty much set in concrete about the use of that Better Off funding simply for the reason that we can ring fence $800,000 of that for a spend in the rural areas. So they're not disadvantaged in any way, shape or form. We are one district, and while the urgency is with Martinborough and Greytown, this is a very good alternative way of funding this without imposing additional costs on our ratepayers, which are, and I do appreciate the fact that this has been an intergenerational thing where neglect has occurred. There is no doubt about that at all. And I don't think, having been a long-term councillor, I can hold my hand up and say, we've let our community down. We have, and I'm not doubting that at all. But what I'm saying now is here's a way of rectifying it without imposing burden and additional cost on our ratepayers. And I guess that's my final argument. I've got nothing else to say. Sorry.
Yeah. Anybody else? Councillor Maynard, are you with your hand up?
Yeah, look, I completely endorse exactly what Councillor Olds has said in this instance. I don't believe that, I believe that I believe that we've got the opportunity now and we need to take it. And I still stand with what I said previously, that it needs to be that same amount, that 1 million coming through from the Better Off funding, that ring fencing of the rest of the Better Off funding to look at for our rural communities. So that way, as you had mentioned previously, that you didn't want the rural communities to miss out, and that's how I see it needs to happen, and we need to get started. And the only thing that I would want to see is to make sure that we actually have exactly how Wellington Water is going to be putting it in place to make sure that they don't spend over what they've said it's going to cost.
Thank you. Now, is Councillor Macaulay able to comment, or does she wish to?
Thing that to the focus is a bit tricky because I don't know about a modification to Rebecca's modification, which was a compromise, which was actually 1.8, I think, isn't it, total of this wellbeing fund. What about a split of 900,000 twice instead of 500,000? as another suggestion of a compromise.
Thank you. Right, right of reply time.
So I think the only thing that I would add is just to further clarify my belief that using the better off funding is taking resources from future residents and ratepayers to pay for actions of previous residents and ratepayers that they didn't pay for properly. So even though it seems more comfortable to relieve the burden of the ratepayers today, it's going to affect people in the future, and that's fundamentally why I'm against using the better off funding. I think going for a 50-50 split on the costs feels to me like a fair compromise, because, like I said, everybody has to compromise their own moral beliefs around it, but it still gets the needs met. But I wouldn't be comfortable hollowing out any more of that fund. It feels like robbing from the future.
Okay, so we're now coming to the vote. I'll ask Amy to read it out again. Sorry, Amy. But I want people to be clear what we're voting on.
This is the amendment?
Yes.
Yep.
No, it's not an amendment. It's a new motion.
So approve 0.5 million of additional funding in the annual plan financial year 23-24. Sorry, I've messed up the wording.
Okay, well, hey,
Sorry, I've gotten a bit lost.
Oh, right.
So I'll just read what I've got here then. So approve 0.5 million of additional funding in the annual plan financial year 23-24 rates, and 0.5 million from DIA better off funding to be spent on bringing the Martinborough wastewater treatment plant back to compliance, including desludging at an estimated total cost of 0.862 million. And B, desludging of the Greytown wastewater treatment plant at an estimated cost of 0.360 million.
hey, now is everybody clear what we're voting on? It's basically a 50-50 split between rates and a better off fund.
And has Tally had a chance?
Yeah, so based on the orange option half, instead of orange one, the total rates increase would be around, and this is only an estimate, it's not fact, 24.7.
Okay, thank you.
It's an estimate only. That does not mean that is the correct total number later.
Thank you.
The factors,
Can we also just clarify, we're talking $500,000 full stop?
instead of $1 million, which took us up 28%, taken that number down 500,000. So the estimated total rates increase would be 24.7, 25%.
So we have a further question.
So just to also clarify, Amy's got 8.6 and 3.6 of cost.
Yeah.
So, but we're only talking about $1 million. So that
So
understanding is that the balance would go into the next.
yes,
financial year.
yeah. This is a multi-year project, so we're
Just to clarify.
yeah. Thank you. Okay, everyone happy to vote?
So just one other clarification. Could we just, if this doesn't pass, then we go back to the previous resolution, which is where we're stuck 50-50.
Well, let's just see where we get. Huh? Okay, all in favour, please say aye and raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All against, raise your hands or call out very loudly. 1, 2,
Against.
3, 4. I took it you were a no vote. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so the resolution passes by 6-4. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So
Next.
It wasn't me.
it was us.
Can we please ask that that's actually noted down, everyone's votes for and against, please?
Councillor Macaulay, we've concluded the voting. Would you like to hang up now or stay on the call?
I would love to hang up. Thank you.
I'm sure everybody will let you get back to bed. I'll see you when you get back. Okay, bye-bye.
Right, so I think I can see a request for another adjournment. And how long, councillor Plymouth?
We stop.
A week stop, okay.
We still have a week.
Time, possibly.
5 minutes. And when we come back, we will move through the 4 questions that we have on the
Resolutions.
It's live.
Thank you. Now, can I just do a double check? Have we got councillor Maynard with us?
Hi there, I am here. I'm going to have to get.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Amanda.
Am I?
Can you resurrect the chart we had up there before?
I took a photo of it.
Right.
I do apologise. I'm actually feeling pretty crook, so I'm going to have to get going. But
Okay.
I think Amanda had already captured, and I still sit exactly where I was. Orange for water, rural roads at 300,000, library no more funding. And the grants at 100K. So
Right. Thank you
that's
very
all I
much.
need to say. Okay, thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks. So what we're going to do now is to move very quickly through the 4 questions. And we're going to start with the water. And because I'm still confused about colours.
Red, orange or green.
Red, orange or green. So the options are 3.5 million, 4.5 million, or 7.5 million. And can I request a resolution from somebody that would highlight their preferred colour?
Is this, are we passing resolutions on this today, or is this just getting guidance for the next stage?
Yes, so we're getting the agreement of councillors so that we can send it off to staff to do what they.
Resolution, or is that scary?
Well, we would like it to be in the form of a resolution, just so we've actually got something to action.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure whether.
Okay, so I mean, this is sort of an infrastructure question, really, isn't it? Councillor Ealams, what do you think?
Lollies.
Okay. All right. So in the absence of anybody else doing it, I shall stick my neck out, and I move that we approve the 4.5 million / orange option as was consulted on in our recent consultation. Do I have a seconder? I do. Councillor Olds, thank you very much. I don't wish to say any more because we've battered it around a bit, but certainly, well, yes, thank you, Councillor Ealams.
I would second the 4.5, but ask, do we have the ability to add any extra KPIs in there to Wellington Water to ensure their accountability financially?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, certainly the chief executive has made a note of that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other comments? Thank you, Councillor Ealams. I think we're all anxious to see that happen. All right. I won't exercise a right of reply. I'll just put it to the vote. All those in favour of the resolution, which is the 4.5 / orange option, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? It's carried. Anybody not wishing to vote one way or the other? Okay, excellent. So now we come to the rural roading reserve, where we appear to have hit a small impasse, possibly. So, Councillor Ealams, would you like to move a resolution one way or the other?
I move a resolution for rural roading reserve to be increased to 500K for the annual plan 2023-24.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? We do. Councillor Bosley, would you like to speak for it? No. I'll let Councillor Ealams go first. Yeah.
Councillor Bosley just spoke for me. I think we've through enough.
Okay. Rightio. So we'll have you just checking you've got the resolution.
500.
500.
Yep.
Excellent. Okay. Yes.
I'll just make sure Amanda changed, you changed my one to 300. Like I said earlier, I did also.
Rural roading reserve.
So it was 4-4, but then what he changed to 3, so it should be 5-3.
5-3.
I don't know if that changes Aidan's point of view, Aidan.
But well, we'll see. Other people may have changed their mind too, of course. Okay, so the resolution is that we
I think you might have been in here with.
that we allocate 500K to the Rural Road Reserve. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
1, 2, 3. All against, please say no. No. Right, so the resolution is lost. Councillor Williams, would you like a substitute resolution, please?
Would you like me to do it?
No, I won't make a substitute resolution.
I'd like to propose that we go to the 300,000 funding as is current.
Yeah. And do I have a seconder for that? Yes, I do, Councillor Gray. Your opportunity to persuade us.
Look, I think we need to look at the whole roading issue and who's funding it going forward. And I think I like the 500, but I want to resolve who's funding it before we start putting the rates up.
Okay. Seconder, do you have a comment, Councillor Gray?
Just would back that up, that I think that currently the roading, that's part of the feedback that we got from everybody, was that they don't think the roading is funded in a fair model at the moment, and we've got a chance to fix it. Also, a large majority of well, not a large majority, but a number of the submissions that we got really highlighted the pain that rural people are feeling with the rates increase at the 300 anyway, so.
Thank you very much. Councillor Woodcock.
I just to reiterate the same facts. I'd just like to be noted here to that we definitely look at the funding model, and once we've done that, can we come back to that rural reserve, and whether we, once we've redone the funding model, whether we up the reserve or whatever at that time.
Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. Certainly appreciate the motion that I passed being lost, and the new motion that has been tabled. But on top of that, can we also take into consideration the large amount of feedback which we received from ratepayers about the roading network, and whether or not the CE can make a note about can we start looking into concerns that were raised by the ratepayers regarding maintenance levels of service, tables and culverts.
And I can see the CE making some notes to that effect.
Thank you.
Right, reply.
Yeah, I'd just make a comment. While we've been going over this over the last couple of months, I've spoken to lots of farmers around where I live, and obviously we're on the flat, not in the hilly part where all the damage is actually occurring. And it was really interesting listening to them and saying, we're farmers, we want to support our other farmers out on the district. So there was no issue from the farmers where I live to say, put more money into it. Because all this emergency money is not spent around Taraniko and on the western part of the district. It's all spent out on the eastern side. All of it, 100% of it. And I really love the fact that the rural people on the western side of our district are so supportive of helping their fellow farmers, but it doesn't change the fact that our roading use has changed over so long. And that's the crux here, about who's using our roads. And it's not the farmers using it 90% of the time now, or 70% of the time. It's actually quite funny, you know, I listened to Jerry Boyne out at Tora. I've known through kids, and the amount of surfers and things that are heading out that way. And, you know, there's hundreds of them every weekend. And so these are not, you know, these are tourists, for want of a better term. And we need to actually acknowledge that in our funding model. Sure.
Thank you very much. Right, we'll proceed to vote. Would you like to read the resolution?
Keep current rural roading reserve at 300,000 annual budget for the annual plan.
Yeah.
Financial year 23.
Right. Okay. All in favour, please say aye. 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 Against? No. Carried. We come now to the libraries. Do I have a resolution, please?
Yeah, it's a resolution that we do not fund the extra $165,000 in the annual plan.
Right, thank you very much. I will second that. Would you like to speak to the resolution? No. Anybody like to speak for or against? Thank you.
Yes, I'll speak against the resolution, knowing that it's probably still going to go through, but just
We're allowed to disagree.
behalf again of the libraries, that they are such a valuable asset. They, we get very good feedback from our community about them. In fact, that's the one that we get the positive feedback about. I would prefer to fund it so that the libraries can operate to the best of their capacity. But
Thank you very much. Councillor Whitcomb.
Thanks, Chair. I'll speak for it.
Thanks, Woody.
I was very much on the fence on this one, but after listening to people, it sort of made my mind up. Just one point I'd like to make, if the CEO could make a note of one concern I had from ratepayers at the evening and at the town hall for coming in for having a yak to us, and Colin reiterated it earlier on, was the fact they're not just a library, they're actually a service centre. This lady that made the comment to me is an ex-librarian, and she doesn't like the fact that they just call it a library. And I think a lot of people in the community don't realise that they're also a service centre. So whether we can just make sure that that information is out there for the community to be a bit more obvious, maybe.
Councillor Rolls.
Thanks, Woody. I'm pleased you raised that because I've always seen them as a service centre since I was since amalgamation actually. And I don't know how that fits within the funding model of libraries actually, because the library staff that are employed there go beyond being librarians and they deal with a lot of the issues such as job registrations, council inquiries as well, emails, mail drop-off centres, a whole raft of things. And I don't know if the model is specifically related to library staff as librarians, or is it related to the way we fund them I'm talking about, is it related to their broader role? And it's particularly relating to Greytown and Featherston, because Martinborough, you have your council offices here where people can pop in and do their biz, their council biz. So people go to the library here to have a coffee and to actually physically talk to the librarian. So maybe the model needs to be looked at. And I think, and personally, I support some additional funding resources in there to alleviate some of the stresses on the current staff, and looking at how we actually fund it in the future may be something we have a conversation about in our rating review modelling.
Councillor Elips.
Thanks, Mayor Martin. I will be voting to remove, going along with the motion. I certainly take your point, Bex. I think in this whole discussion, we've had some different ideas and options. Councillor Bosley spoke about the options of closing one day a week or something like that. But I think, perhaps we can be creative, or perhaps the organisation can be creative to ensure that the impact on the ratepayers is not as bad as what it perhaps has been perceived to be.
Thank you very much. Councillor Woodcock, and then
just a point on what Colin made then, actually, a very good point, Colin, how you said Martinborough has the council offices, they also have the eyesight, they also have a cafe here. So can we sort of lean towards, if it comes the case where a library has to shut because staff are sick and whatnot, can we maybe lean towards more Martinborough gets shut due to the fact that the other towns don't have those other service centres in there, and they maybe need to be used, be open for that purpose?
I might have a preference for leaving that to management too.
Point taken, yes.
What did you put your CV in for the CE's role?
So, Councillor Sadler.
I guess just I'll be voting in for this, but just further to my point this morning, that I'd certainly support the officers if they could manage the pool so that of staff other than fund, so that any impact on opening times was known in advance where possible, rather than being ad hoc.
Right. No, I think that's a very well taken point. I think often people aren't quite so unnecessarily as upset about the fact that it's closed as that they find that it's closed when they come to the door. I think that seems to be something. And I understood as a result of a noisy interjection some time ago that that people are now being emailed if they've registered their email. They'll be told that it's not open. But thank you, Paul.
It's a minor point, but relating to a lot of the discussions here, there's actually a lot of really exciting work going on in the library space about rethinking their future purpose and how they engage with the community and their position within the community. So, you know, whilst it's recognised that, you know, having a service centre operation is a good thing as an interface, and on a local level, there's actually a much bigger discussion to be had around what value they provide in terms of it maybe being a gallery or, you know, other types of offerings that are beyond the traditional book off the shelf type thing. So, and I know that Annette, as the library manager, has been showing a lot of enthusiasm in that space.
Just have to look at Christchurch New Library.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I was just saying, I mean, in terms of the community wanting us to show innovative thinking, I think so in this library space is definitely an area where we can demonstrate how we are thinking along those lines.
In fact, I was going to make exactly that point, so I will not do so. Thank you. Okay, we'll go to the vote, and we're voting basically for the none option. What's the exact words, Amy?
To exclude the extra 165,000 for a pool of casual rates.
Moved by?
No, I didn't catch the second one.
I think it was Councillor Gray. No?
If no one knows who it is.
So
This is
That's how you look at it.
no, one against, two against, two against.
That's, sorry, am I getting confused? Not funding the additional, isn't it?
And that has been carried.
Yeah, so I'm against that.
Yeah, we understand. We got you against it. Thank you very much. And I think, I think we have commented that we don't want people calling councillors confused, but they may refer to themselves that way. Okay, so now we come to community grants. Do I have a motion, please? Thank you.
I have the motion that we fund $120,000 worth of community grants for the coming annual plan year.
I will second that. Would you like to make some?
I think this value speaks to the importance of the community grants, which I value highly, but it does also speak to the fact that we did have, whilst not the majority, but a large portion of our feedback suggests that we should remove the fund. So I think it's a bit of a concession. We keep them, but we keep them at a lesser amount.
Yes, I will speak in favour of the motion too. I think there are two things at play here. One, we do need to demonstrate to our residents that we are sharpening the pencil, but at the same time, these are potentially very valuable ways in which we can support the community. I also don't think it will do this council any harm to actually be a little more disciplined about where it gives its grants to. If you have a lot of money, and I'm not saying 170k is a lot, but it does make it easier to agree to some marginal applications rather than being quite focused on what grants to which community groups produce the greatest community benefit. And I think it won't do us any harm to think about that for a year. I will just say here that if this motion carries, I will then move a motion that 15% of it be retained in the first instance for supporting charitable organisations that work with low-income families on rates remission. So that's my comment.
Your worship, and I can hear where you come from with 15%, but if I'm talking particularly about food banks and the way that they're funded. At the moment, our trust funds, Featherston in particular, a lot of that money comes via our resources, but there's also external funding that is available through MSD. And I don't want to see us set our ratepayers up as MSD funders, and I think if we're going to do that, we'd have to be very specific about who we actually support out of that 15%. And I don't believe that food banks would be serving our ratepayers any great interest of us putting additional money into food banks when there is additional funding coming.
That's a motion that's yet to come.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wondered if councillors would be willing to consider an alternative use of the Better Off funding as a replacement of this. As at the end of the day, you've spoken a lot about community wellbeing. This is, an opportunity to actually say whether you need this funding stream at all for the next year, whilst you have actually got the Better Off funding, which you could purpose in some way around the grant space. So I just thought I'd put it on there.
Good.
Thank you very much, Councillor Elands.
I'll pass a resolution that we use
Well, I'm not sure that we can. It's good. It's
That's the resolution we're going to reach the Better Off funding.
it is good practice to deal with one resolution at a time. And so we've got one here. If you're not happy with it, you're most welcome to vote against it, of course.
First thing, Paul, that's out of line with this particular meeting for you to bring something up like that in this meeting now. So please don't do that. Because if you're going to suggest spending money, you should be writing to us as advice, not just bringing it out of the blue. I'm sorry, but I want to talk about this one. And I supported you to start with. And I'm just and I'm sort of stuck here because I'm just looking at the keeping the budget. It says 63% of the respondents said keep the budget. And then I looked at there and it was like 17 cents a week. And that worked out at $8.43 a year if we reduced it. And I thought, are we going to, the amount of good that extra $50,000 could do in the community for the sake of $8.43 a week? And I've just got to stay.
I think it's $8 a year.
$8.43 a year. A year. And I just thought reducing it by $50,000 to save $8.43 a year compared to the good that it can do for those community groups. I've got to go with this.
Thank you, Councillor Gray.
I just wanted to get some clarification for you, I think probably to you, Amanda, around the grants that we give out. I know that a number of them are multi-year grants.
Yep.
Could you talk about how many of those are currently in play? None. Cool. Done.
Okay.
That's my question.
Okay.
Just a quick comment about the extra cost. I want to send a message to our community to say that we're doing our very best to save rates and to save them the additional cost. Now, while it's only a small amount, dropping from 170 to 120, does send a message out to our community that we are careful about where we should go. And I think I take on board what Martin says about being very particular about who we actually grant funds to. I think it's really, really important that we work on that. And public perception is really important, even though it's a small amount.
Thank you very much.
Those two last decisions potentially save about 1%.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Woodcock.
This is something I was pretty much on the fence with. Just come to cry. I sort of thought, yep, take it away. And then I started looking into who we give it to and like cobblestone, the fell and all that sort of thing. Well, yeah, these things really need it. What I really would like to know, we asked the question earlier, man might know, how much of that stays in the district and how much goes out?
Most of it stays. So I'd say the museum is probably the only one off the top of my head.
Roughly, what's that worth?
I think it was about 30,000 each
Territory, that's an MOU, yeah.
MOU.
Yeah.
That's, I could have that wrong. I'll have to double check. But we have got it on our FAQ, on our website. We did, people asked what the grants were spent on over the last 3 years, and we put out exactly what they've been spent on.
Because I suppose if it's an MOU, taking the point, if we go down to 120, it's actually not 120 for our community, it's 90.
Well, no, none of those MOUs are current. So they're MOUs for 3 years and they're done as part of a training.
As such.
So you can start again.
Yeah.
So
We're not bound to it at this
so
point.
we can just walk away from that for even if it's just for a year.
Yeah, I don't know how the MOU with Aratoi has been negotiated and whether it's been negotiated with the four potentially councils. I'd have to go back and check.
Well, it's generally, I must admit, it's generally done on a 3 year cycle, 3 yearly cycle, but it's done during the LTP phase.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like Destination Wairarapa, for instance, in the way that we fund them. We did that on an LTP basis as part of a grant, or as part of their grant funding stream. So obviously this is for a year. Our LTP is coming up, and those that I would imagine they'll be presenting to us through the.
I think last time they were done at the beginning of the triennium.
Right.
Because
Okay.
I think we used to, going back, grants were done to line up with LTP. Like you actually put in your grant funding with your LTP. And then we created a grants policy. That meant that we had more regular grant opportunities. So we've got this little bit of a tension between some people, some groups having multi-year, MOU agreements, and some having to come to us each year.
So at the moment, so if we get to the end of the financial year, we're not held to Aratoi.
I don't believe so. I'll double check, but my understanding is we've got no outstanding agreements after the end of this financial year.
Okay, so does the mover wish to exercise? Then the motion is that we retain, we alter community grants to 120,000 K per year, or for next year, sorry. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. That's carried. Thank you. Well, that deals with the issue of the 4 questions that we had in our consultation, and I hope that Paul, that there's enough direction and guidance there from councillors
Certainly, yeah.
to go and help you do whatever comes next. Thank you also to all of your staff and yourself. This has been a testing process. I had a little worry at one point that we were going to turn into one of those Irish uncompromised, plans. But
I had the utmost confidence in everybody. Yes.
The last thing I wish to put on the agenda for today is that in the submissions, in the oral submission, we had submissions from the 3 community boards and also from the Maori Standing Committee. Now, I wonder, Amanda, if you, because I know you took better notes than me, in terms of matters that might require us to contemplate some expenditure, I don't recall just off the top of my head that the Martinborough delegation were looking for money for anything. Can you remind me?
No, they were,
Agree with that?
they were looking for a plan for the sewage pond.
Yeah.
The Maori Standing Committee was after $10,000 for the initial plan for the code.
Yeah.
And undertaking that would look up
Clean up the Europa.
Which is
the particular one, the one that's not Papawai or
and I don't recall the other 2 community boards.
they were
thinking
neutral on all
longer term
the issues.
So if we come to the Maori Standing Committee items, somebody said to me afterwards, well, actually, they had a recollection that the council previously had voted to tidy up the Europa, but does anybody here have a long enough memory to comment?
Yep, absolutely positive we did, and I think it was 2 years ago, Russell, wasn't it? And it wasn't, I'm sure it was in the consultation document, and it was around the same time as the berm mowing went.
That's right. I think that's right. And it also links into, at the time we went out and visited the Moai as part of the basic plan and follow on. So these issues rise up in that manner, and we gave that undertaking that councillor was outlined.
Okay, so what if that hadn't been the case, what I was going to suggest now is that actually we do resolve that we cooperate with the local whānau who use the Wairarapa and we get the job done. My view is because of some of the sensitivities around these things, that however that job be done, it should be done in consultation with the relevant marae and Maori Standing Committee and whānau. And I think one could easily envisage an arrangement whereby we contract with a local suitably qualified contractor who could work harmoniously with the families who have their dead ones there to get a sort of fit for purpose arrangement. And I cannot imagine under any possibilities how this would cost more than a very, very small amount of money. But
If I can remember, I think it was just a very small adjustment to the schedule in our maintenance contract that we've already got with our contractor. It should have been done, if I recall right. That's about right, isn't it, Russ? And it wasn't a big amount of money, and I think we didn't even quote any extra money for it, I don't think, because it was going to be able to be absorbed.
Yeah. I wonder if we don't need a better arrangement with City Care. I invite the CEO to vote that. Okay, any other comments on that? No, okay, yes.
I'm just wondering, I've got quite a few substantive notes on each, and I'll just quickly go through them. Greytown talked about emergency response and resilience. They talked about green spaces being of great importance, and LSD made a commitment to talk to Louise about the reserves reserve, which I checked with Karen and Charlie yesterday. There is a reserves reserve for green spaces. And they gave me the number, I can't remember off the top of my head.
$3 million.
$2.7 million. They talked about
the annual report.
Support, and I don't know what support necessarily means for Arbor Day and the celebration of their commemorative events. They talked quite a lot about the importance of major events in the town and tourism development. They also talked about parking, the disability parking, and they also talked about pensioner housing. And then they talked about the food bank. They don't have a food bank. They rely on Mount Wairarapa and Featherston. And that they would like commitment from council to dedicate some empty land to a community garden. And they talked about the land that backs at the end of Arbor Way onto the railway.
The park is coming to Greytown, I think, on the left-hand side of the public toilets.
Oh, yeah.
That park, it's over park. Yeah.
And then they talked about the situation with the old library and that rental. So those were the things.
They also mentioned, Amanda, about I think assistance with flood protection, things like sandbags.
Oh, yeah.
And stuff.
So Featherston funded that from their operational funds from there, so they did that themselves. So I can't see any reason why we make a different approach for it.
Well, they've got money. Greytown's got money in their contribution list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For Martinborough, they talked definitely about, that was the first thing they spoke about, was the wastewater system. They talked about the use of this building. They also talked about footpaths and the investment into footpaths. They wanted us to be able to articulate what the priorities were and to communicate that well with the community. They had a lot of came across from a number of speakers as well, local things to be done locally.
They did ask that question. They did say that there were things that council were doing that weren't essential and we should stop doing them. I remember you specifically, went back and asked what were those things.
Does everybody know where Greenaway Crescent is now?
And I expect that was probably.
It was in today's Times Age.
Yeah, probably.
So they talked about footpath being, a brand new footpath being in the end of a new cul-de-sac, and what happens is you get development funds when a new development happens, and footpaths are part of that development fund, so they're paid for by the government, not by us. So,
Well, yeah, Greenaway Place has been there for probably
okay, I just know what it was, so.
50 years.
And they find that they just gave some feedback on the website and how hard it was to find them.
Thank you. Yeah, and you've left the best till last.
Featherston, I didn't take any notes on Featherston because that was largely a presentation about how they were going to prioritise their decision.
Yeah. So
I think there was
so
no request for funds or support, and certainly initially anyway.
We fund our own things in Featherston.
Yeah.
So the Maori Standing Committee had the Europa, we've dealt with now. They also had the PO. My view is that that's probably a long-term plan issue, but I'm open to discussions.
And they have the Fallen as well.
So I wasn't quite sure because there was quite a lot of response to that to say, well, we are doing this in Featherston, we're doing this in Greytown. I wasn't quite clear whether or not that was what they were looking for.
So with the,
I think we need to, I don't think that's in the short term requires money, but it possibly does require some.
I think the likes of the memorial that we've designed or Express designed for to go in our centre, we've had conversations with the council in terms of its location, the design work's been done and been funded. And the only thing, and in fact, I wasn't aware that, and Dorita said to me yesterday about Maori Standing Committee having some grant funding where we can probably tap into that resource rather than through council and get some funding, because that's $7,000 we need to find.
Yeah. I'll come to you in a second, Russell. I mean, my understanding is that PO are not necessarily cheap when you multiply it by 3. There is one about to go up in Clifford Square very soon. So I think we're definitely making progress. And my personal view is that the long-term plan is the next step to make more progress, but I'm open to contrary views. Russell, we have a contrary view?
No, just add a bit of side comment. For Maori Standing Committee, yes, the PO and the importance of it, and also I made side comment on the importance of cultural storytelling, the Maori story. Two cultures have that visually present throughout the district. Yeah. So a nudge for
Your narrative.
Mm-hmm. I think we need some specific proposals before we would know what to actually do and go ahead there. And the one that they mentioned was the refurbishment of the reception area. And I'm not quite sure where that is on the plan, but Councillor Healy.
Just looking through the submission here, and point 2 was discuss the PO for each town, including Purina, initial budget of 10K a year to scope, and then consult design and 10K per PO, so a total of 50K.
Yeah.
And also to encourage council to seek funding from third-party agencies such as DIA and East Central Community Trust. But I'm thinking, better off funding whether.
Oh, we can't keep talking about it.
But certainly this is on the agenda, and I mean, and I'll certainly encourage and any discussion to support the Maori Standing Committee and their submission, because like they said, their submission is pretty much essentially the same that they presented the last long-term plan in 2021, and nothing has occurred.
Right.
So I think we're going to be remiss if we don't, if they've come to us this time around, and then we push it back to another long-term plan next year.
And I think, to be fair, that actually is pretty good use of the Better Off funding. It's visual, it's for everybody.
I think we've got some left now as well.
For you, Mr. Mayor, Stefan might want to comment on what I'm about to say, and I might get this muddled. The original application went in for the Better Off Funding, a wellbeing fund. The proposal was to create a governing body that would help decide how that money would be spent. And I believe it was councillors, community board members, party standing committee, and potentially a member of the community would be part of that decision-making body. Is that correct, Stefan?
So it's actually an interesting point that's been raised because at the moment the table is voted for 500,000 to be used towards the sludging, which means the 1.38 remaining. Actually, that will still, in the minds of DIA, be allocated to the original project until we advise them otherwise. The original project was a community wellbeing fund with a pretty good horizontal governance, as has been mentioned, but we hadn't designed the criteria or the administration or the delivery or focus of that fund, and so now we have the exciting prospect of doing that potentially with $1.3 million. Unfortunately, not as much of multi-year efforts as we would have done because we don't have tranche 2, but still we have, I believe, until 2025 to allocate the funds. So it gives you a couple of years to play with, and it's not an inconsiderable, not an insignificant amount of money.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right. That brings, I did have a couple of other items I did wish to raise, but I'm not going to do it now. Councillor Summer.
Yeah, look, I would just like, before you close the meeting, Paul, I apologise for my outburst to you. Should have raised it with you separately. So
Thank you, councillor.
thank you.
Well, just in that case, what we're, yes, okay, so Amy tells me that there is a motion on the books that's been moved by me to cooperate with whānau to support the cleanup of the Wairarapa at Puhanui, Whakatua, Mokatomo and Papawai. Do I have a seconder? I do, thanks. Can I just put it to the vote? All in favour, please say aye. That's excellent. What else have I missed out, Amy?
No, that's it.
One, okay, one today. I usually
Not as confused as Colin.
Can I ask that we have no more Friday meetings? Because a lot of people are getting confused today, so.
Okay, so kia whakaaria te tapu, kia wātia aitiara, kia tariki whakatahi ai, kia tariki whakatahi ai, aumi e, hui e. Thank you, ladies. We get a couple of minutes.